Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I've been looking at Forge of the Artificer, and of course, makes sense to start with the Artificer main class, and I went over the base class in my last video. Today I want to go over the subclasses. Now with the main class, I didn't really have anything to compare it to other than the previous version of the Artificer, so that's what I did. In this video, I do have something to compare them to. I'm going to compare them to each other. So we have 5 subclasses included with the Artificer here in the new publication, and I don't think they're all that balanced against each other. I wish they were. I wish we had 5 subclasses and you looked at all of them and they were all very different, but they all had similar value. I think that would have been ideal. We go from the full range from very good subclasses to pretty weak subclasses. So what I want to do is I'm going to start at what I think is the weakest. Now, I don't think any of them are absolutely terrible. I have seen subclasses for D&D where, like, if we look at the Sun Soul Monk, for example, just terrible. Nothing that bad. But nevertheless, if you are going to play the new Artificer and you want to know what kind of power level you want to achieve, this might help you. Now, obviously, there's subjective stuff here. This is based on my experiences. So if your table experiences things differently, maybe I'll say something that doesn't resonate with you, and that's fine. You'll leave this video knowing what all these subclasses can do and why I think some of them are more powerful than others. So we're going to begin with not the Alchemist. I don't think the Alchemist is the weakest subclass for the Artificer anymore. I think the weakest subclass for the Artificer is the Cartographer, the new one, and that really sucks because I really like new subclasses. So I was really disappointed with this. This is not very good. There are a couple features here that I think are pretty good, but there are some features here that I think are almost worthless. And that there's like a whole level that I think is almost worthless. So the Cartographer. Cartographers are the premier navigators and reconnaissance agents. Using their creations, Cartificers can highlight threats, safeguard allies, and carve portals to distant locations. And there we have the artwork, new artwork. And I kind of laughed when I looked at this because if you know my thumbnails recently, I usually like stick my face on a body, and I look at this artwork and it looks like the face was stuck on the body to me. I don't know. It almost looks like one of my thumbnails. But anyway, at level 3, we're going to get a few different things. We're going to start with Tools of the Trade. You gain the following benefits. And I will say level 3 isn't too bad. I think the problems with Cartographer come after level 3. But level 3 is fine. I don't think it's overly powerful, but there's some stuff here that's decent. We're going to begin with tool proficiency. We get Calligrapher's supplies and Cartographer's tools. So obviously a ribbon there. And then scroll crafting. When you scribe a spell scroll using the crafting rules in the player's handbook, the amount of time required to craft it is halved. That's pretty good, actually, especially if you're making first level scrolls. Just keep in mind that as an Artificer, you're not going to have as high level spells as other spellcasters will, so you might not be able to make the more powerful scrolls. But for making first level scrolls, if you do a lot of that in your group, having the time will be good. Doesn't reduce the price though, so if you find the price a barrier to how many scrolls you can make, that won't help you. Then we get the spell list, so these are all automatically prepared spells. We have Fairy Fire, Guiding Bolt, Healing Word, Locate Object, Mind Spike, Call Lightning, Clairvoyance, Banishment, Locate Creatures, Scrying, and Teleportation Circle. So the list here is okay, but not great. Healing Word is a good spell. Locate Object is a good spell. Banishment is a good spell. There's no like super powerful spells here, but there's some good spells on here. There's a lot of filler too. Scrying, Teleportation Circle, Clairvoyance, Mind Spike isn't good. I'm not even really a fan of Fairy Fire, and that's going to be a problem for this subclass. I was a fan of Fairy Fire in 5.0. So if we're looking at the 2014 rules, I like Fairy Fire. If I'm looking at the 2024 rules, not so much. And it's not that Fairy Fire changed, because it didn't. But the game changed. And what Fairy Fire does is it's a concentration spell that takes an action that can provide advantage to attack certain creatures. But advantage is so easy to get in the 2024 rules. A lot of warriors are going to have advantage that they generate on their own. Now, it used to be that was the barbarian that could do that, and everybody else kind of struggled to get advantage and was hoping spellcasters might get it for them. It's not that way anymore. You might just have a Vex weapon, and then you have advantage half the time, at least. So yeah, I'm not a fan of Fairy Fire, and that's a problem because they lean into Fairy Fire hard with this subclass. We go on to the Adventurer's Atlas. Whenever you finish a long rest while holding Cartographer's tools, you can use that tool to create a set of magical maps by touching at least 2 creatures. And one of them can be yourself, up to a maximum number of creatures equal to 1 plus your intelligence modifier. Each target receives a magical map, which constantly updates to show the relative position of all map holders, but is illegible to all others. The map lasts until you die, or you use this feature again, at which point existing maps created by this feature immediately vanish. And these are what the maps do for the target while they are carrying it. And I don't think that means you have to hold it. I think that just means it has to be in your possession. So I think if you have it in your backpack or something, you're still getting these benefits. At least that's the way I read it. We get awareness. The target adds a D4 to initiative rolls, and that's decent. Bonuses to initiative are good. It's only a D4, but bonuses to initiative are good. I'd be inclined, if I was to play a Cartographer, is that with my replicate magic item, I might get a weapon of warning for somebody, give everyone an advantage on initiative plus the D4. That's, you're getting some synergy. So I think despite the fact it's only a D4, awareness is actually reasonably good. Then we have positioning. The target knows the location of all other map holders that are on the same plane of existence as itself. When casting a spell or creating another effect that requires being able to see the effect's target, a map holder can target another map holder regardless of sight or cover, so long as the other map holder is still within the effect's range. Now, the knowing where everybody else is sounds really cool. I'm not sure how much actual effect in game that will have. I don't remember the last time I played as a player where there was another party member and we couldn't figure out where they are and needed a way to find them. There's probably been, I've played a lot of D&D, it's probably been cases, but it's not common. The other part of this, I have my optimizer brain, so I look at things and sometimes I get a little alarm going saying there's something here. I get that here. When casting a spell or creating another effect that requires being able to see the effect's target, a map holder can target another map holder regardless of sight or cover, so long as the other map holder is within the effect's range. So there's obvious benefit here if, you have a map holder that's invisible and, you cast a spell like Healing Word that requires that you see them. Well, you don't need to see them anymore. That's an obvious benefit. Also, they could be on the other side of a wall or a door, and you could still cast Healing Word on them. So some benefits are obvious. I feel like there could be something more here, but I was kind of looking, and I haven't come up with anything yet. So if I do come up with something like really good that you can do with this, that might affect where I put Cartographer on the list. But currently, I'm just seeing the obvious benefit here. But there's something in my head that tells me there could be some kind of trick here to take advantage of this that I'm not considering. But I haven't been able to come up with anything. So if you have, let me know. But there's the obvious stuff, right? But anyway, let's move on. It's something to think about, though. If you're going to think about ways to make this subclass better than it appears otherwise, I would think there might be something under positioning, a way to use that or exploit that or something, because there's the ability to ignore line of sight and cover is unique. So, might be something there. Level 3 as well, mapping magic. This is the final part of level 3. Illuminated Cartography. You can cast Fairy Fire without expending a spell slot, outlining the affected creatures as if in ink. You can do so a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. Regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, this is far from the only subclass that gets a first level spell that they can cast and their ability modifier number of times for free. I wish it wasn't Fairy Fire. At level 3, I might still get some value out of Fairy Fire. I don't think Fairy Fire is useless, but I am definitely not going to be casting Fairy Fire at higher levels. Fairy Fire is concentration. It's not what I want to be concentrating on when I'm higher level. Level 3 is one thing because as an Artificer, I'm still stuck with first level spells. But yeah, once I get to level 5, level 9, level 13, I don't think I want to cast Fairy Fire anymore, even if it's for free. So that's not great. It's not useless, but I don't think at higher levels you're going to appreciate that very much, is what I think. And then Portal Jump. And Portal Jump, actually, I find pretty interesting. On your turn, you can spend an amount of movement equal to half your speed to teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 10 feet of yourself or within 5 feet of a creature that's within 30 feet of you and holding one of your adventure's atlas maps. You can't use this benefit if your speed is 0. So there are all kinds of subclasses that get they can expend a bonus action, and then they can teleport up to 30 feet to a space they can see a certain number of times. I appreciate that they went differently here. I think this is worse in terms of power than being able to do that, despite the fact that we're not using our bonus action here. We're just using half our speed, but the inability to do it when your speed is 0 is a problem. Right, because a lot of the times you want to teleport, it's because you got grappled or restrained, and you won't be able to do that here. The second thing is the distance is less, right? If you have a map holder exactly where you want them to be, 30 feet away, then you can teleport 30 feet. But otherwise, you're going to be teleporting a lesser distance. But there's no limited use here, so you don't have to track it as a resource. So I like that. So Portal Jump stands out to me as a decent feature, and Positioning stands out to me as a decent feature. Awareness stands out to me as a decent feature. None of them are super powerful, though again, Positioning might have potential I haven't seen, and then things go wrong. We get to level 5 and Guided Precision. Once per turn, whenever you cast a spell from your Cartographer spells list or hit a creature affected by your Fairy Fire with an attack roll, you can add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of the spell or attack. In addition, taking damage can't cause you to lose concentration on Fairy Fire. So they've leaned hard into Fairy Fire here, and at level 5, that's the point where I'm not necessarily wanting to cast Fairy Fire anymore. Well, now, if I don't cast Fairy Fire, the only thing I get here is I can add my damage to one of these spells, except most of these spells don't do damage. Mind Spike does, but Mind Spike is awful. I don't want to cast Mind Spike. Call Lightning does. Call Lightning is... And that's it, right? Otherwise, we have to do a full round of setup, right? Because Fairy Fire is an action to cast, and then we have to hope that some of our enemies have failed their saving throw, and then we have to attack those enemies to add your intelligence modifier. And there's 5 subclasses here. All of them get something for damage at level 5. We have 2 that get extra attack, and then we have 3 that get a damage boost. This is the only one that has significant conditions placed on getting the damage. It's very easy to access the extra damage if you're an Artillerist or an Alchemist, but not a Cartographer. And this is the only thing you get at level 5, and I think it's really bad. I think it's almost so bad that it's barely going to feel like a feature at all. And that means that you have to wait from level 3 to level 9 to get anything that feels good. And that's not good at all. Because level 9, although it's much better, still isn't amazing. We have Ingenious Movement. When you use your Flash of Genius, you were a willing creature of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of yourself, can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see as part of that same reaction. I do appreciate that if we're teleporting somebody else, they don't have to use their reaction. That's good. And now we can teleport 30 feet. Now we don't have to worry about our speed being 0, but we do have to use Flash of Genius in order to activate this. Still, I think this is decent, but I don't think it's fantastic. And after what we saw at level 5, this makes level 3 onward, up to the point where spell storing items are available, not great. And once spell storing items are available, which is at level 11, then we have the base Artificer list. And what else do we have? Call Lightning. Well, Call Lightning is a mediocre spell, and it uses concentration. And the nice thing about Call Lightning is it saves you spell slots, because you only have to cast it once, and then you can use your magic action on following turns to do something with it. Well, that doesn't work well with a spell storing item at all, because a spell storing item is giving you a ton of castings. You want something you want to cast and cast and cast. You don't want to cast and cast and cast Call Lightning. Clairvoyance is very circumstantial. You're not going to want that in a spell storing item. You might need it once or twice. So it's just not a good list for spell storing items, which means that at level 5 it's going to really hurt, and at level 9 it's not going to feel a lot better, and then at level 11 you're way behind everybody else. And then we get to level 15, Superior Atlas. Don't think we'll see a lot of level 15 Cartographers, but we get Safe Haven. When a map holder would be reduced to 0 hit points and not killed outright, the creature can destroy its map. The creature's hit points instead change to a number equal to twice your Artificer level, and the creature is teleported to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of you or another map holder of its choice. That's decent. That's decent. Unerring Path. If you are one of the map holders for your Adventures Atlas, so normally you don't have to be one. So now in order to get this benefit, you have to take one of them yourself, which maybe isn't a problem. I mean, at this point, you probably have 6, so you might be giving one to every member of the party, including yourself. But anyway, you can cast Find the Path without expending a spell slot, without preparing the spell, and without needing spell components. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Find the Path can be a great spell, but it is very circumstantial. There is almost no chance you will need it on a daily basis or anywhere near a daily basis. So I don't think it's very good. So Safe Haven is pretty good. So level 15 is decent. But there's no feature here that blows me away. Right from level 3 to level 15. And there's a number of features here that I think are big misses. And so overall, I just think up to level 11, the Cartographer, I think it's the weakest. And then at level 11, once the spell storing item comes into play, it's even weaker compared to the other subclasses, except maybe my second weakest choice, which shouldn't be a surprise, is the Alchemist. The Alchemist has traditionally been the weakest subclass for the Artificer. They have made improvements here, and some of those improvements are good enough that I do think they edge out the Cartographer to not be the weakest subclass anymore. But they have the same problem as the Cartographer does at level 11. So we have Tools of the Trade at level 3, gain the following benefits. Tool Proficiency, you get Alchemist Supplies and Herbalism Kit, and so there's your ribbon. And Potion Crafting, have the speed to do potions. I don't think that's as good as Scrolls, but it's okay. And then we have the Alchemist spells. We have Healing Word, Ray of Sickness, Flaming Sphere, Melsa Acid Arrow, Gaseous Form, Mass Healing Word, Death Ward, Vitriolic Sphere, Cloud Kill, Raise Dead. Just like with the Cartographer, there are some good spells on here. There's no great spells on here. Healing Word is pretty good. Ray of Sickness is actually pretty good now, as long as you're fighting something that's not immune to poison. And Mass Healing Word is decent. Vitriolic Sphere is decent. Death Ward is decent. So there's some good stuff here, but nothing great. Then we have the big one, right? Their main feature is the Experimental Elixir, whenever you finish a long rest while holding Alchemist supplies, you can use a tool to magically produce 2 elixirs. It used to be 1, so that's gone up. For each elixir, roll on the experimental elixir table for the elixir's effect, which is triggered when someone drinks the elixir. The elixir appears in a vial, and the vial vanishes when the elixir is drunk or poured out. If any elixir remains when you finish a long rest, the elixir and its vial vanish. I think before you actually had to have the empty vial and then you filled it, but that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Then drinking elixir. As a bonus action, a creature can drink the elixir or administer it to another creature within 5 feet of itself. There's 2 improvements here. The first one is not a surprise because potions used to take an action to drink. They now take a bonus action to drink. So elixirs, making them a bonus action to drink makes perfect sense. But it's definitely a big improvement. And then before, you could only administer it to another creature if they were incapacitated. So the idea would be, I think, is like if they dropped to 0 hit points, you could give them a healing elixir or something like that. Now they can be up and running, and you can give it to them as a buff, right? And a bonus action for you. That's a significant improvement as well. So the elixirs just got a lot better from drinking an elixir alone. Creating additional elixirs. As a magic action while holding Alchemist supplies, you can expend 1 spell slot to create another elixir. When you do so, you choose its effect from the experimental elixir table rather than rolling. So, no longer random. When you reach certain Artificer levels, you can make additional elixir at the end of each long rest. 3 at level 5, 4 at level 9, 5 at level 15. And so, if we think about we start with 2, that's not very much. But it'll eventually be 5. But if we expand a spell slot, we can get more elixirs. So the question is, are these better than a spell slot? Well, let's look at them. And I think it's pretty apparent right from our first option. Healing. The drinker regains a number of hit points equal to 2d8 plus your intelligence modifier. So that's the same amount of healing from a Cure Wounds spell cast at level 1. The number of hit points restored increases by a d8 when you reach Artificer levels 9 and 15. So by the time we get to level 15, it'd be equivalent to a 2nd level Cure Wounds spell. Except unlike a regular Cure Wounds spell, it's a bonus action. So we take a quickened Cure Wounds at level 1, and this would be equivalent to that. And then once we get to level 9, then it is better than that. So is it worth a 1st level slot? Absolutely. I would absolutely do that. Why even bother preparing Cure Wounds? Just have more healing elixirs and use those instead. They also can't be counterspelled, by the way. Then we have our second one, Swiftness. The drinker's speed increases by 10 feet for 1 hour. That's a long strider spell, right? The bonus increases when you reach Artificer levels 9 and 15 to 15 feet and 20 feet. Then it's better than a long strider spell. Is that worth a 1st level slot? Yeah. Long Strider's a good spell, and it is definitely worth a 1st level slot and maybe a 2nd level slot at those higher levels. Resilience. The drinker gains a +1 bonus to their armor class for 10 minutes. The duration increases when you reach Artificer levels 9, 1 hour, and 15, 8 hours. This one is harder to compare to spells because there's no spell that's non-concentration that gives you a bonus to armor class. The spell, I guess, I would compare it to is Shield of Faith, but Shield of Faith does require concentration, but it does give you a +2 bonus to your armor class. I'd take a +1 bonus with no concentration over that. I think this is definitely worth a 1st level slot, and 10 minutes is not a bad duration here. And then we have Boldness. The drinker can roll a d4 and add the number rolled to every attack roll and saving throw it makes for the next minute. So kind of like a Bless, but only 1 target, but no concentration. The duration increases when you reach Artificers levels 9 and 15, and we eventually get an hour for it. That's pretty good. Is this worth a 1st level slot? I think so. Once again, remember, Bless is an action. This is a bonus action, and no concentration. So even with 1 target, I think this is worth a 1st level slot at least. Level 5, we have Flight. The drinker gains a fly speed of 10 feet for 10 minutes. The fly speed increases whenever you reach Artificer levels, so it becomes 20 feet and then 30 feet. 10 feet's not very much. Now, if we apply a Swiftness elixir as well, it would be 20 feet. If we apply a Long Strider spell as well, because they would stack, that would be 30 feet. And I should talk about stacking too, because that comes into play with Boldness as well. Although Boldness gives you the same benefit that Bless would, it would stack with Bless, so you would have 2d4 to those rolls instead of 1d4. Again, I think this is worth a first level slot, and the pain of the lower speed reduces as we go up in level. And by the way, that is another change from the previous version of the Alchemist, is they didn't scale in the old one. The healing was less as well, but also they didn't scale. And then level 6, you determine the elixir's effect by choosing one of the other rolls on this table. So what I would suggest is, if you do want to play an Alchemist, I would be using first level slots and converting them into elixirs, and I think it's well worth that slot. And that would mean that once you get to level 5 and you start getting higher level spells, then you might want to look at your preparations, because how many first level spells do you need to prepare if you're going to, just expend the slots on these anyway? I mean, unless you're going to upcast, then we can potentially get rid of some preparations that we otherwise would have to do, giving us a little more versatility in casting. I think the improvement to elixirs is significant from the previous version. In the previous version, I thought they were almost useless. I thought they were worse than first level spells. Now they're better. And that distinction is massive since we're converting spell slots into elixirs, or we have that option. In the previous version, I wasn't sure it was worth doing. Now I think it is worth doing. So now you're actually going to have elixirs. So it's better. I don't think it's great, but I think it's good now. And that's something. Then we get to level 5 and we get Alchemical Savant. Whenever you cast a spell using your Alchemist supplies as a spellcasting focus, you gain a bonus to one roll of the spell. That roll must restore hit points or be a damage roll that deals acid, fire, or poison damage. The bonus equals your intelligence modifier, minimum bonus of +1. Do you remember the 5th level ability of the Cartographer? Do you see how much easier this is to apply? So much easier. Do acid, fire, or poison damage. No problem. And we get the bonus to healing. So I just think it's self-evident how much better this is. And this isn't a fantastic feature. We have 2 subclasses that get extra attack at level 5. One of them actually gets an improved extra attack now. And both of those, I'd say, are better than this. But this is just so much better than what the Cartographer got. Then at level 9, we have Restorative Reagents. You can cast Lesser Restoration without expending a spell slot and without preparing the spell, provided you use Alchemist supplies as a spellcasting focus. You can do so a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. You'll gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. And Lesser Restoration is a good spell when you need it. You are not going to need it intelligence number of times per long rest. You just won't. You might cast it once. Now, when you cast it that once, it's a good spell. But you're just not going to need it the rest of those times. You need somebody who needs the Lesser Restoration or just sits there. And that's a problem with the feature, is that they've given you all these castings that you really have no way to use them. So it's nice to have when you need it, but you're just not going to get the use out of it that it looks like when you read it. And that brings us to level 11. And the spell storing item comes into play. And now we're looking at, Gaseous Form. Are you going to be casting Gaseous Form 10 times a day? Don't think so. Mass Healing Word, can't choose it. It's a bonus action cast. So it doesn't qualify for the spell storing item. So, there's Flaming Sphere or something, but I don't want to do that. And it's the same problem as Call Lightning had, where it's a low damage spell, but the advantage is it saves you spell slots. That's no good. And Melf's Acid Arrow is terrible. So, a spell storing item is a problem for the Alchemist as well. And at level 11, I think they fall way behind the other subclasses. But you can see here, I think they do a little better before level 11 than they used to. But level 11, they're going to fall so far behind. I don't think you're going to get to level 15 and get a really good feature, which is too bad, because their level 15 feature is legitimately good. We get Alchemical Eruption. When you cast an Artificer spell that deals acid, fire, or poison damage to target, you can also deal 2d8 force damage to the target. You can use this benefit once on your turns. So this stacks with Alchemical Savant, right? And even if you cast a cantrip, it could be Firebolt Or Acid Splash. We're adding our intelligence modifier plus another 2d8 plus the cantrip's damage. We're probably doubling the damage. Then we have Chemical Resistance. You gain resistance to acid damage and poison damage. You also gain immunity to the poison condition. So 2 resistances to, poison is pretty common. Acid is not all that common, but it's not super rare either. And condition immunity. Not bad. And then Conjured Cauldron. You can cast Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron without expending a spell slot, without preparing the spell, and without material components. Of course, you can't prepare the spell anyway, because it's a 6th level spell, and you will never get 6th level spells, provided you use Alchemist supplies as a spellcasting focus. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So you're getting a 6th level spell once per day, and unlike Find the Path, Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron is easy to use every day. Easy. Take oil of slipperiness out of them and give everybody freedom of movement. That's just a good use of Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron if you're not sure what else to do with it. No problem to use this every day. Level 15, we have 3 benefits and they're all good. It's a little sad that it's hidden behind that level 11 wall of spell storing items. But if you do play an Alchemist to level 15, this is really good. And the Alchemist is still too weak. Still too weak, but boy, it is better. It is better than it used to be until you get to level 11, because at level 11, it's just going to get left in the dust, which is too bad, because the spell storing item is so overwhelmingly powerful if you have the right spells to put in it, and the Alchemist does not. So that's the second weakest. Then we get to the middle position. So this is the one I think is perfectly average. And this is a close call because there's 2 that I think are very close. I'm going to say the Armor. I might have said the Artillerist. And if you think it's the Artillerist, I'm not going to argue hard with you. But they're very close in terms of power, in my opinion. The Armor modifies armor to function almost like a second skin. The Armor is enhanced to hone the Armor's magic, unleash potent attacks, and generate formidable defense. So we do have a new option here versus the previous version. I'm not sure it's more powerful than the other 2, but that's good. I like having 3 options for my armor that are relatively balanced against each other, because it gives me more I can do with my character. It's more interesting. So that's good. I don't want to have the same armor all the time necessarily. We gain the following benefits. We have armor training. You gain training with heavy armor, tool proficiency, smith's tools, armor crafting. When you craft non-magical or magic armor, the amount of time required to craft it is halved. Again, this is the ribbon. I think it's a pretty good ribbon. Then we have the armor spells. We have Magic Missile, Thunder Wave, Mirror Image, Shatter, Hypnotic Pattern, Lightning Bolt, Fire Shield, Greater Invisibility, Pass Wall, and Wall of Force. And it is very easy to notice that Shield isn't on this list, because as an armor, we might be thinking, I want to make a armor class heavy character. And so, of course, you kind of want the Shield spell, and it's not here. So you notice that. But if we forget what we were maybe hoping for and just look at the list on its own merits, this is a significantly better list than we've seen so far. Significantly better than either the Alchemist or the Cartographer. Mirror Image is a great spell. Hypnotic Pattern is a great spell. Wall of Force is a great spell. We have great spells on this list. Those lists didn't have any great spells. So I think it's a pretty good list. At level 3, I don't think it'll feel all that strong, but it gets there eventually. Then we have our arcane armor. So when, as a magic action, when you have smith's tools in hand, you can turn a suit of armor you're wearing into arcane armor. The armor continues to be arcane armor until you don another suit of armor or you die. You gain the following benefits while wearing arcane armor. There's no strength requirement, which would only be the case with heavy armor, right? Quick don and doff. You can don or doff the armor using the utilize action. Being able to do that with heavy armor is pretty impressive. The armor can't be removed against your will. And spellcasting focus. You can use the arcane armor as a spellcasting focus for your Artificer spells. All good stuff. And then we have our armor model. You can customize your arcane armor. When you do so, choose one of the following armor models: Dreadnought, Guardian, or Infiltrator. Used to just be Guardian or Infiltrator. The model you choose gives you special benefits while you wear it. Each model includes a special weapon. When you attack with that weapon, you can add your intelligence modifier instead of your strength or dexterity modifier to the attack and damage rolls. You can change the armor's model whenever you finish a long or short rest, or short or long rest, if you have Smith's tools in hand. So, one at a time. Dreadnought's the new one. We did see it in playtest, right? But this is the first time we see it as officially printed. We get Force Demolisher. An arcane wrecking ball or sledgehammer projects from your armor. The Demolisher counts as a simple melee weapon with the reach property. Does a d10 force damage on a hit. If you hit a creature that is at least one size smaller than you with the Demolisher, you can push it up to 10 feet straight away from yourself or pull the creature up to 10 feet towards yourself. So just keep in mind that if you are comparing this to a martial class, a martial class can do more with weapons than you can. Your Force Demolisher isn't going to compare to the Barbarian using their halberd or whatever it is, right? You're just not going to compare because you don't have a mastery. The pull or push 10 feet essentially replaces having a weapon mastery. And the push part of it might not be as good, depending on the size of your enemy, as just the push mastery itself. But we do have the pull option, so it's probably about the same. D10 is okay damage for a weapon, but it doesn't have the heavy properties, so you can't take Great Weapon Master or anything like that. So in terms of damage, you're not going to keep up to a martial. In terms of the special properties of the weapon, you might be similar to a martial. So just be prepared that you're not going to be... You get this vision of this huge Dreadnought, Force Demolisher. The Barbarian's going to out-hit you. Giant Stature. As a bonus action, you can transform and enlarge your armor for 1 minute. For the duration, your reach increases by 5 feet. If you are smaller than large, you become large, along with anything else you're wearing. That does affect what you can push. You still can't push as big a target as the push mastery, though. If there isn't enough room for you to increase your size doesn't change. You can use this bonus action a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. You regain augmented uses when you finish a long rest. So you might not be able to use it in every combat, but you should be able to use it for your big combats. Overall, I think the Dreadnought is well balanced against the other two options, and it gives you something neat to do. So I like it. And then we have the Guardian. You design your armor to be in the front line of conflict. It has the following features. Thunder Pulse. You can discharge concussive blasts with strikes from your armor. Simple melee weapon, D8 thunder damage on a hit, so a little bit less damage than the Juggernaut. Also no reach. Creature hit by the pulse has disadvantage on attack rolls against targets other than you until the start of your next turn. Is this better than the Sap Mastery? I don't know. It can affect more than one attack, which is better, but it doesn't affect them if they attack you, which is worse. So, like with the Dreadnought, there's similarities to existing weapon masteries, and in some ways it's better, some ways it's worse. I'd say overall it's relatively equivalent to having the Sap Mastery. And then Defensive Field. Well Bloodied. You can take a bonus action to gain temporary hit points equal to your Artificer level. You lose these temporary hit points if you doff the armor. I think at higher levels that'll feel more dramatic. At third level, it's 3 temporary hit points, right? But a lot of these features will do your level plus something. So this just being your level, you're really counting on that scaling to make that feel a little more impactful. Then we have Infiltrator. So this is our ranged option. Lightning Launcher. A gem-like node appears on your armor for which you can shoot bolts of lightning. The launcher counts as a simple range weapon with a normal range of 90 feet and a long range of 300 feet. That's good range. Pretty good range. Not quite like longbow, but pretty good. And it deals a d6 lightning damage on a hit. So that's not a lot of damage, and lightning is probably going to be a little less reliable than piercing damage, which you probably end up with most ranged weapons. On each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a launcher, you can deal an extra d6 lightning damage to that target. So once we get 2d6, now we're better than ranged weapons, but it's only once on each of our turns. So again, I don't think this is going to match up to what a martial can do with ranged weapons. I mean, a martial can also get Great Weapon Master on a ranged weapon. We're not going to get it on this. But It's, I think, comparable to the first two options. We don't really get a control effect here. Instead, we're getting a damage boost, and the base damage is lower. So even with the damage boost, we're not that much more damage than those other two, but we have the advantage of being at range. And then our speed increases by 5 feet. It's not a lot, but I'll take a speed increase. And dampening fields. You have advantage on dexterity stealth checks. If the armor imposes disadvantage on such checks, they cancel each other out. So then it's straight up. And yeah, I have generally seen, Guardian and Infiltrator didn't really change. I've generally seen Guardian taken more often than Infiltrator, but I've seen Infiltrator taken and done all right with. But that's back in the day when you could use Sharpshooter with it. You can still use Sharpshooter with it, but Sharpshooter doesn't increase your damage anymore. So I wouldn't recommend it. Increase your intelligence, right? But yeah, I think these are 3 decently varied options. So I like that. Extra attack at level 5. Extra attack, of course, if you're using a weapon, is good. Improved armor. You gain the following benefits. Armor replication. You learn an additional plan for your replicate magic item feature. It must be in the armor category. If you replace that plan, it must be replaced with another plan. In addition, you can create an additional item with that feature, and the item must also be in the armor category. This was 2. So the armor actually got nerfed at level 9. And that was kind of the premier feature of the armor before, is at level 9 they got 2 improvements to their armor with infusions. Now they're going to get 1 replicate item. That's still actually pretty good. You're getting 1 additional replicate item is still a good thing, but it's not as good as it used to be. And then we get a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with a special weapon of our arcane armor model. That's nice. And I don't think they got that before. So that is a boost. So I think maybe that's to compensate you for taking away the 1 infusion. I think this is good. Level 9, I think, is good for the armor. And then we hit level 11, and we get our spell storing item. And up to level 11, I think the armor did good. Improved armor is good. Not as good, maybe, as before, but good. Extra attack, of course, is good. And our armor model thing is good. And then we get our spell storing item, and we are going to put Lightning Bolt in it. Hypnotic Pattern is a better spell than Lightning Bolt, but not better for a spell stirring item, because you do not need 10 Hypnotic Patterns in a day. Lightning Bolt, you can cast it round after round after round, no concentration, and it's just going to do some damage. And you can give this to your homunculus or whatever. Talk to your DM about what your homunculus can hold or whatever, but give it to something like that, or an NPC or another pet, and just have them use a lightning bolt every round, and that will probably be better for you than having Hypnotic Pattern and they cast it once and then they have to concentrate on it, and then at the end of the day you've used 3 out of 10 charges. Then we get to level 15 and we get Perfected Armor, and we get the damage die of our first Demolisher increases to 2d6 force damage. In addition, when you use your giant stature, your reach increases by 10 feet. Your reach can get very big here, because I believe we had a reach weapon plus an additional 5 feet of reach, and now we've got an additional 10 feet of reach. You're almost a ranged character at this point. Your size can increase to large or huge, and that's going to help you with the moving of 10 feet, right? Now we can actually move any creature that the push mastery could move. And you have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws for the duration. Those are decent buffs on there. Guardian, the damage die of your Thunder Pulse increases to a d10 thunder damage. That's not great. That's 1. In addition, when a huge or smaller creature that you can see ends its turn within 30 feet of you, you can take a reaction to magically force that creature to make a strength saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, you pull the creature up to 25 feet directly towards you to an unoccupied space. If you pull the target to a space within 5 feet of yourself, you can make a melee weapon attack as part of that reaction. You can take this reaction a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier, and you'll gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Pretty good feature, very limited use. Very, very limited use. If it was all the time, I'd say it's very good. And in that case, it would actually remind me quite a bit of the World Tree Barbarian. With this many uses, not as good. Not as good. So I don't think the Guardian did as well as the Dreadnought at level 15. And then we have the Infiltrator. The damage die of your lightning launcher increases to 2d6 lightning damage. Any creature that takes lightning damage from your lightning launcher glimmers with magical light until the start of your next turn. The glimmer of light sheds dim light in 5-foot radius, and it has disadvantage on attack rolls against you, as the light jolts it as it attacks you. Additionally, as a bonus action, you can gain a fly speed equal to twice your speed. Don't get too excited until the end of your current turn. You can take this bonus action a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, I will point out that we're going to 2d6 damage, but it's 3d6 once, right, on our turn. But like Guardian, I don't think it did as well as Dreadnought at level 15. But I think the armor is perfectly reasonable. There is no level here where I think they got screwed. And that matters. And they have a decent spell list here, despite not having shield. So, yeah, I have no problem putting them in the middle, and I almost put them second. I am inching them out with the Artillerist, but I think the Artillerist and the armor are very comparable. An Artillerist specializes in using magic to hurl energy, projectiles, and explosions on a battlefield. You gain the following benefits: ranged weaponry. You gain proficiency with martial ranged weapons, so I assume you probably want to look at something like a musket. Then we have tool proficiency. You gain proficiency with woodcarver's tools. If you already have this proficiency, you gain proficiency with another type of artisan's tools. And wand crafting. When you craft a magic wand, the amount of time to craft it is halved. Here is our spell list. And there's the shield spell. And yes, my top two subclasses are both going to have the shield spell. And Fireball is a standout spell. And Wall of Force is a standout spell. There's some other spells on here that are okay, but those are the three spells that kind of stand out to me. Notice that Fireball is level 3 and an action to cast, which kind of makes it a spell stirring item, obvious pick. Then we have Eldritch Cannon. Use smith tools and woodcarver's tools. You can take a magic action to create a small or tiny Eldritch Cannon to an unoccupied space within a horizontal surface within 5 feet of yourself. The cannon's game statistics appear below. You determine its appearance, including whether you carry it or not. It disappears if it's reduced to 0 hit points or after an hour, and you dismiss it early as a magic action. Once you create a cannon, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest or expand a spell slot to create one, which you will. It is absolutely worth a spell slot to create a cannon if you need one. You can only have one cannon at a time, and you can't create one if you already have one. All right, so here are our cannons. The first thing I want to point out is that this is not a pet, right? We have lots of subclasses, including our, number one subclass here that have pets, and pets are creatures. That means that a lot of area of effect stuff says it affects creatures in the area. Your cannons will not be affected by something that only affects creatures. And that's a lot of stuff. More stuff than you might think. Armor class 18. Hit points is 5 times your Artificer level. They're immune to poison and psychic. And as a bonus action, you can order the cannon to use the Flamethrower, Force Ballista, or Protector option below. You can direct the cannon to move up to 15 feet after that option. You used to have to make the cannon, and then you picked when you made it which of these three it was, and that's what it was, and that's all it could do. Being able to switch is really good because it means that Protector is something you can do just when it's needed. And then you can do Flamethrower or Force Ballista if it's not needed, which happens a lot with the Protector cannon. So that's really good. That's a boost to this subclass over the previous version that is really dramatic. Flamethrower, we have a 15-foot cone of fire, dexterity saving throw for creatures in the cone. They take 2d8 fire damage or half as much on a successful save. And flammable creatures in the cone that aren't being worn or carried start burning. Force Ballista, you make a ranged spell attack originating from the cannon, a creature or object within 120 feet of it. So if you are at any kind of range, this is your choice. On a hit, the target takes 2d8 force damage, and if the target is a creature, it is pushed 5 feet away from the cannon. One thing I always note, this is the case with the old Force Ballista 2, is this isn't, you can push them 5 feet away, they get pushed 5 feet away. So if you don't want them to move, don't hit them with the Force Ballista. And Protector, the cannon emits a burst of positive energy that grants itself and creatures of your choice within 10 feet of the cannon a number of temporary hit points. equal to 1d8 plus your intelligence modifier, minimum of +1. This has traditionally been my favorite option, was the Protector Cannon, but I'm excited to play an Artillerist now where I can have a Protector Cannon, and then when I don't need it, I have a Flamethrower or Force Ballista. I like that a lot. Then we have our Arcane Firearm. When you finish a long rest, you can use Woodcarver's tools to carve special sigils into a rod, staff, wand, or martial range weapon, and thereby turn it into your Arcane Firearm. The sigils disappear from the object. If you later carve them on a different item, the sigils otherwise last indefinitely. You can use your Arcane Firearm as a spellcasting focus for Artificer spells, and when you cast an Artificer spell through the firearm, roll a d8 and gain a bonus to one of the spell's damage rolls equal to the number rolled. Once again, how easy is that? Potentially even easier than the Alchemist, though the Alchemist has a healing bonus as well. This one doesn't have. Also, the Alchemist is a set bonus equal to your intelligence, while this one rolls a d8. But still, super easy. And if you do take something like a musket, or even a longbow, or whatever, a crossbow, whatever, then you can make it your Arcane Firearm, and you can cast True Strike through it, and then you'll get an additional d8 damage on your True Strike attack. It's not as good as having extra attack, but it gives you something to do, right? While you're using your bonus action to do your cannon stuff. And then Explosive Cannon. Every Eldritch Cannon you create is now more destructive. You gain the following benefits. Detonate. When your cannon takes damage, you can take a reaction to command the cannon to detonate if you're within 60 feet of it. Doing so destroys the cannon and forces each creature within 20 feet of it to make a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC, taking 3d10 force damage on a failed save or half as much damage on a successful one. And Firepower, the cannon's damage rolls and the number of temporary hit points granted by the Protector, which wasn't the case before, increased by a d8. So this got boosted. And I believe the Detonate does more damage too, even though I still don't know how often I'd use that part. But this is good. Nothing wrong with this at all. And then we hit level 11. And at level 11, I'm putting Fireball in my spell storing item. Pretty much guaranteed. Unless I'm going somewhere where I know things are going to be immune to fire, then it's going to be Fireball. And I think that's a really nice use for your spell storing item. And so I think the Artillerist does pretty good up to level 11 and pretty good once they hit level 11. Then we get fortified position, and we get double firepower. You can now have two cannons at the same time. You can create two with the same magic action, and you can activate both of them with your bonus action, so they're twice as good. And if people need temporary hit points, then that means that you can do the temporary hit points and one of the attack options, or two attack options. You probably wouldn't do two temporary hit points, but it would give you two rolls, and you could take the better of the two rolls. So you might, if there wasn't like an applicable target or something. And you can't create a third cannon while you have two. Double firepower obviously is really good. And Shimmering Field Projection, you and your allies have half cover within 10 feet of your Eldritch Cannon. That's a +2 armor class. And you have two Eldritch Cannons, so you can cover two areas where the party is. That's good too. So I think the Artillerist is pretty good. I think it is very similar in terms of power to the armor. I'm ranking it higher here, but like I said, I think they're very close. There's a clear winner. The clear winner is the Battlesmith. The Battlesmith's always been the most powerful. They got boosted, and their spell storing item options are nuts. So, a Battlesmith is a combination of protector and medic, an expert at defending others, and repairing material and personnel. To aid in their work, Battlesmiths are accompanied by a steel defender, a protective companion of their own creation. And we're going to get Smith's Tools. We're going to get, when you craft a non-magical or magic weapon, the amount of time is halved. Then we get our spells. What a list. What a list. We get Shield, of course. Shining Smite. When you are playing a caster or a half-caster and you're competing with martials, things like Shining Smite make a big difference. Paladins feel Shining Smite. You're going to feel it too. And you have the same number of spell slots as a Paladin does. Then we have a Warding Bond. Aura Vitality is good. Conjure Barrage is good. Fire Shield is all right. Banishing Smite. Mass Cure Wounds is really good. Great list. Battle ready. Your combat training and your experiments with magic have paid off in 2 ways. When you attack with a magic weapon, you can use your intelligence modifier instead of your strength or dexterity modifier for attack and damage rolls. And weapon knowledge, you gain proficiency with martial weapons. You can use a weapon for which you have proficiency as a spellcasting focus for Artificer spells. Your tinkering has born you a companion, Steel Defender. You determine the defender's appearance and whether it has 2 legs or 4. Your choices don't affect the defender's game statistics. The defender is friendly to you or your allies and obeys you. It vanishes when you die. The one thing about Steel Defenders, the artwork tends to, by the way, I love this artwork too. They get the best artwork too. How is that? But the artwork shows a dog or looks like a dog. The previous artwork also looked like a dog, a different kind of dog, but nevertheless. So I don't know if the standard is it's supposed to look like a dog, but I always, it doesn't say whether your Steel Defender can be used as a mount if you're small size or smaller. It also doesn't say whether your Steel Defender can hold things. So you have to work that stuff out with your DM. The Defender in combat. In combat, the Defender acts during your turn. Improvement. Used to go after you. It can move and take its reaction on its own, but it can only the only action it can take is a dodge action unless you use a bonus action to command it to take an action. If you have the incapacitated condition, the Defender acts on its own and isn't limited to the dodge action. So if you are using it as a mount, it's better now. And it's better anyway. Being able to coordinate your actions with your pet is better than having your pet just go after you. You'll notice that if you've ever played a Beastmaster Ranger, they have the same benefit. Then restoring or replacing the Defender has died within the last hour. You can take a magic action to touch it and expend a spell slot, and then it returns to life after 1 minute with all its hit points. And whenever you finish a long rest, you can create a new Defender if you have Smith's tools in hands. If you already have a Defender from this feature, the first one vanishes. So I compared the Steel Defender to the previous version, and there's a couple differences, but it's very similar. Like the armor class used to be 15, now it's 12 plus your intelligence modifier, so probably more now, but very similar. Then we have extra attack. You can attack twice instead of once. Whenever you take the attack action on your turn, you can forego one of those attacks. When you take the attack action, command your Steel Defender to take the Force-empowered rend action. So we get extra attack, and then we have one additional option with it, which is probably not as good as our regular weapon attack, but it depends. Depends what kind of weapon we're using. It depends how much we focused on weapon use in terms of feats and that kind of thing. Depends on whether we have advantage or disadvantage, or whether our Steel Defender has advantage or disadvantage. So there will be cases where your Steel Defender either is going to be better at attacking, or the only one that can attack the one you want to attack, and it will be worth it, which means this extra attack is better than regular extra attack. Then we have Arcane Jolt at level 9, and this is the same as it used to be. So if you're used to Arcane Jolt, it's of the same value. When you hit a target with an attack roll using a magic weapon, or your Steel Defender hits a target, you can channel magical energy with a strike for one of the following effects. And you can either do an extra 2d6 force damage, which is the one I find taken most often. And restorative energy, you can choose one creature or object you can see within 30 feet of the target, and they get an additional 2d6 hit points of healing. You can use this energy a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier, but no more than once per turn, and you'll gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. The damage bonus is nice. Feels good when you put it on. The healing is nice. They're not huge amounts, right? They're pretty modest amounts. The thing here is we don't have very many uses. And so Arcane Jolt isn't a great feature. It's okay because, the 2d6, it's nice to have. It feels good when you use it, but it runs up way too quick. So this is the first time we get a feature for the Battlesmith that doesn't rock. But it's not a bad feature. And then level 11 hits, and we get our spell storing item. And it's just not fair to the other artificers. So the obvious pick here is Conjure Barrage. Conjure Barrage is a 60-foot cone. All enemies in it are going to take 5d8 force damage. Force damage is super reliable. You're not going to have those cases like the Artillerist has, where everything's immune to what you got in there. Force is the most reliable type of damage in the game. 60-foot cone, one of the problems with that is it can be tough to not have allies in there. Don't care with Conjure Barrage. You only affect your enemies. Conjure Barrage is a good spell for rangers, but it is a better spell for us because we'll be able to cast it 10 friggin' times. And we won't even necessarily need to cast it ourselves. Maybe our Steel Defender can do it. Maybe our Homunculus can do it. Just really good. Really good. The idea that you could maybe take a Homunculus and just kind of move him back out of the combat, and then, once per turn, hit the battlefield with a Conjure Barrage, and all the enemies take 5d8 damage every round for 10 rounds a day. It's just better than what anybody else gets. And the funny thing is if we look at their other third level option, or a Vitality, that's actually a significantly better option than at least 2 of the 5 subclasses have itself. 10 Aura Vitalities would be 700 hit points of healing on average. Not a lot at once, so in combat you often take damage faster than Aura Vitality can heal it. But it would, if you put it in a spell storing item, everyone gets full hit points between combats, and you wouldn't even need to track, really. Like, if I as a DM, I'd say don't bother rolling. Don't bother spending 20 minutes of time with all these rolls throughout the day when you're not going to use half the healing that you have. So Aura Vitality is actually not a bad choice. It's not as good as Conjure Barrage. I would take Conjure Barrage over Aura Vitality. But Aura Vitality, I mean, if I was looking at the Armorer with their Lightning Bolt, Aura Vitality versus Lightning Bolt, that would be a choice. But yeah, here Conjure Barrage is just too good. So at level 11, the Battlesmith was already ahead, but now they're way ahead. And then the improved Defender, we get improved Jolt. The extra damage and healing of our Arcane Jolt both increased to 46. Still not enough uses, but okay. And improved Deflection. When your Steel Defender uses its deflect attack, the attacker takes force damage equal to a d4 plus your intelligence modifier. It's okay. Their level 15 feature is not the best feature. The Alchemist has a way better level 15 feature, but it doesn't matter. They're so far ahead by level 11. Doesn't matter what they get at level 15. They could get nothing at level 15, and they're still the best subclass. And so, yeah, I think far and away now, the Battlesmith is the most powerful Artificer subclass. I've always thought they were the best, but now more than ever. And those are the 5 subclasses. They're not balanced against each other. If it was all like the Armor and the Artillerist, I think, but it's not. So if you want the most powerful Artificer, I'd recommend the Battlesmith. You won't be broken, right? Don't worry about, overshadowing, the other characters unless they're playing Artificers. Because, a Battlesmith is about as powerful as a Paladin of any of the good subclasses. So it's good, but it won't be broken at your table. But I don't see that new subclass getting a lot of use, which is too bad. It would have been really nice to have a new subclass and play with new toys, but I don't know. I don't want to play with their 5th level toy. It's a bad toy. It's not a fun toy. Anyway, those are the subclasses for the Artificer, and hopefully that's of use to you if you decide to make and play the new Artificer. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.